And away we go. Let's see, where am I here? Okay, we'll get started here. I'm sure a few people are going to be wandering in there. Our main topic today is going to be prepping your devices for traveling by Mike Griffin. Before we get to his main topic, we'll cover a few club agenda items. Future meeting, we have the MACSIG, of which Mike is the leader there. So he'll be presenting both today and tomorrow there. The MACSIG is tomorrow, February 21st, in the 201 auditorium. And they've got John Kingsley and Chris Luger of Apple discussing new Mac Pro and the Mac Pro computers, and also a discussion on using audio units in GarageBand. So if you're interested in the Apple products, could be the iPhones, the iPads, questions, discussions, certainly attend the MACSIG meetings there. Then our next general meeting is Wednesday, March 18th here in the Caribbean Room, and it'll be Better Smartphone Photography by Jim Beardsley and back. And he'll go into some tips and tricks and tools that you can use. Our officers, Jim Holman is our president, Linda Brown is our vice president, Paul Ebert is our membership secretary, Stan Miller is our secretary, and he's looking to step down. I'll have a slide here in a minute. And then Andrew Petrucci is our communication coordinator, and my name is Tom Kreitzer. I'm a director at large. I mentioned that Stan is looking to step down there, and so if you're interested in helping out the club and getting engaged a little more, we do have the recording secretary position is open. Basically, it's a pretty easy position. You just need to attend our monthly PC board meetings that are held usually the first Monday of the month in 275 here. But if you can't attend, you can attend remotely, so you can dial in. So that's a commitment of 1 hour a month, and then take minutes from the take notes and minutes from the meeting there and publish it, and that may take about another hour. So your commitment is a total of 2 hours there for recording secretary a month if you're interested. And you can talk to myself or any of the board members. We'd love to get some new blood into the board and help there. Also, we're looking for somebody to organize or lead some of the food events that we have. Stan was also doing that. This new secretary wouldn't have to do that, but if they'd like to do that, that would be great too. Or if somebody else just wants to do the food events, that's fine. We have our April sandwich meeting, July picnic, and our November pizza meeting. And we do have a number of volunteers that help and pick up stuff, but this is just kind of the coordinating there, and everything is reimbursed by the club, so there's no out-of-pocket expenses that you're going to have. But it's just kind of coordinating that and being the contact. So if you're interested in either of those positions, again, talk to myself or another board member there. Members old and new, you can pay your dues to Paul, and since I didn't see Paul here, you can drop them off with myself or that, and we'll get them to Paul there. And a reminder, if you change your email, be sure and notify us, because that's the way we send out notices for the meetings, and that's the way we keep in touch. If you do have suggestions for topics, you can email, talk to any of the board members, or if you want to volunteer to present on particular hardware and software that you use at home or at work there, that'd be great. We have our monthly newsletter. If you want to write a short could mean a sentence or two or multiple pages for our eBytes newsletter. That'd be great also. Website, we have a website. We try and post the slides from these meetings and handouts. We also try and record it, so that's usually out there. The deals section, our newsletter, and that. Any club questions before we get to the main topic? Okay, let me pull up. Our main topic today is going to be preparing your devices for traveling, and it's going to be given by Mike Griffin. And as I mentioned, Mike is he's the leader of the MACSIG, and he also is a board member of what is your official title there? I forgot now. He watches our money in our bank account, our 2 cents of interest that we get each month or whatever from the bank there. So we'll let Mike come up and talk about devices for traveling. Thank you.
Okay. A brief comment, the $8 a year that Tom mentioned, that's for the entire club, including the MACSIG. Somebody tried to give me money to join the MACSIG, and it's all inclusive. The price is right. The talk I'm going to give today, many of you have had your own travels. How many have traveled outside of the U.S. with your mobile devices? Okay, about 2/3 of you, 3/4 of you. How many within the U.S. with your mobile devices? And that's, I'm sure, like 100%. I'm starting off just by showing you pictures of places I've been or my family has been. And so a lot of this will be based on my experience or talking to others. Yours may be different, and be very happy to take your input as well. Patty, good to see you. Been a while. So to begin, there are a number of things I will cover today. The first of which is why should you travel with your mobile device and why shouldn't you? Talk about some of the types and jargon and the configurations that come with such devices, so things to be aware of. What do you want to do before you go on your trip? I make a big deal of power supply considerations because it usually is pretty straightforward, but if you get it wrong, you could have a melted piece of plastic that you carry home with you. And then connectivity considerations, and this is where we get into the strategies for how do you connect when you're out of the country, even when you're in the country. And then finally, some apps. This is going to be a short list of apps. There's so many out there, but I will talk about at least a few that help me get through some travels. And then what do you do after you get back, and a little bit of a wrap up and a bunch of references. So, why do you want to travel with a mobile device? So I'm focusing a lot on the smartphones and the tablets. You can bring your laptop. To me, when you have a tablet that's got 10 to 12 hours of battery life, that's instant on and gets all the email you want and can show you web pages and everything, it's a little harder for me to justify something that weighs 2 to 3 times as much and lasts for an hour or two, but it can be done. But I will focus today on the tablets and the phone. Emergencies are a very good reason for having a device when you're traveling. We actually had a cat that was dying one year. Our youngest daughter was at home. We are in Italy, and we had some experience. We used a card that was a local Italian SIM card, which worked. But I'll talk in a little bit about how the phone number was a country access code, and then a password code, and then the phone number for the phone every time my daughter tried to call us. And that became a little challenging. So in my case, we've modified what we do. But emergencies is a big reason. Notifications from airlines, your flight's delayed, your flight's canceled. The lodging says, you know, you should take this road, the other one's gone, or you don't have a reservation that you thought you did. Communicating with people at home or those you are visiting, like I'm here, Hans, come get me. And then directions, it's great. There are some cities where looking for the signage while you're moving in a vehicle is challenging. It's really nice to have something that does maps and directions, and also will keep track of where there might be congestion or problem areas. Language translation is a big deal, and you don't have to train your phone anymore to recognize your voice, but at the same time, there are plenty of apps out there for translating. I have an iPhone, so I use something called iTranslate Voice. On the Android, Google Translate works just fine. And some of them, it's even crazier. You can talk into the phone, and if the person on the other end has the same app, it can come out in their language, and then vice versa. So not perfect, but it does work. And then finally, your usual things of web browsing, Facebook, and sharing photos, although I will caution against doing much of that when you're traveling for a number of reasons. Well, why not? So if you get it wrong and you're doing international roaming and you don't have some sort of plan or strategy, it can cost you hundreds of dollars when you get home, or thousands of dollars, depending on what you're doing. Let's say you're on Facebook and there's cute videos rolling and you're just doing international roaming. This is a problem. There can be unsecured Wi-Fi networks. So the coffee shop down the street from your hotel in Paris is wonderful, but is it wise to use that Wi-Fi to do banking with? These are some of the questions that come up. Many apps require a data network to work, and you may not realize it, but when you set up your phone here, there are apps that say, I've got a new revision. I will update in the background so I don't bother you. Well, if you're updating in the background when you're out someplace where you're roaming, that's going to cost you money, whether you know it's happening or not. And finally, you get to carry a lot of cables, adapters, plugins, things like that along with you. And so if you want to go to Easter Island, maybe that doesn't feel like you're communing with nature. So there are a number of types of devices, and there's a bunch of jargon that goes with it. I'm just going to skim the surface, but I think many of us know the two major operating systems for mobile devices, Android and iOS. It always amuses me to see what the latest version of the Android operating system is. I think is it Ice Cream? It's one of my favorites. The SIM card. So this is for the cellular connection only, and it stands for Subscriber Identification Module. This is anything related to your personal ID, passwords, what services you do or do not have access to. If you lose this, your phone makes a nice Wi-Fi device, but none of the things that you're paying your monthly payment for are going to work. The GSM, this is a type of antenna and communications in your phone that talks to the SIM card, and this stands for Global Systems for Mobile. There are actually 3 or 4 different frequencies this operates over, but most phones these days will handle all 3 or 4 of these frequencies. So if you go to Australia, it'll work. If you go to Japan, it'll work. If you go to Canada, it'll work. This is as opposed to CDMA, which is what a lot of phones in North America used to be on, and you can still find some of that in rural areas, but a lot of that will not work outside of the US. Everybody knows what USB is, okay? USB, I think, has been around now 24 years. That's about when they first ratified the standard. And then Bluetooth, short distance communications, meaning under 30 feet. And that's a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. You should also secure your Bluetooth communications because somebody sitting next to you at that coffee shop in Paris, they can just see that, well, you've got Bluetooth going. Maybe I will attach to this person and use their bandwidth. It takes a little more than that, but it's a bus. It's not as security focused as the Wi-Fi is. So every modern cell phone these days has cellular at minimum, Wi-Fi at minimum, and Bluetooth capabilities. The tablets, all of them have Wi-Fi, and you pay extra if you want cellular. So why do you care about cellular in your tablet? If I'm driving from here to Chicago and I'm in between cities, Wi-Fi has a range of maybe 200 feet. So if I'm running my map from my tablet, it's going to sit there and look at me funny until I get to a place that does have another Wi-Fi, and then it asks, do you want to sign up? If I'm driving, that's a bit of a nuisance. So there are some advantages to having Wi-Fi on a tablet. Unlike a phone where you have to buy a plan, on the tablets you don't have to. So what I usually do is I don't use the cellular until I'm taking a trip, and then I can get like a 30-day plan that turns on and turns off when I'm done with the 30 days, and the rest of the time I'm not paying for it. Your carrier will give you the option of just putting your tablet on your regular cell plan for maybe 10 bucks a month or something. You can do that too. Depends on how you want to use it. Yes?
The other option might be a hotspot. Use your phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then the tablets within the car. Let's say you're traveling in the car, that could have access even if they don't have cellular service.
Right. So for the sake of the recording, the Wi-Fi hotspot from your phone can be used to let other devices connect to you and therefore get on the internet, like in a car. I noticed Chevy had an ad for a while about how they had Wi-Fi in the car. They failed to tell people that is no good unless you're connected to something outside of the car, and therefore you actually have to get a cellular plan for the car so that you can use the Wi-Fi that's in the car that they're throwing in for free. But this is the nature of the beast. Thanks, Tom. So you've got a trip planned, and in our family it seems like it's Italy much of the time, but it doesn't have to be. Make sure you have a GSM compatible phone or tablet. And this is in the little piece of paper that you get with a very, very, very fine print, but there is a specifications page, and it will talk about the different connectivity capabilities of the phone and which frequencies it talks to, and a lot of these other features that you don't think about when you use the phone here locally. It makes sense before you go anywhere to back up your messages, your photos, your music, your any other files and data on your device. In case it gets lost or stolen, you've got at least the most recent copy of it sitting at home someplace. The other thing, which is a suggestion from Tom, is if you've got a passport, you've got your boarding passes, other documents with your identification on it, scan them before you go, save all of the files to a flash drive, and keep it somewhere separate from the document you're traveling with, but at least you have a easy way to show somebody that, you know, here's my credentials in case something else happens to the originals. And I think 16 gig flash drive is what, $5, $3? So it's cheap insurance. And then there's 2.5 ways to prepare for your travel. These days, I set up a roaming plan with an existing carrier. We'll talk a bit about what some of the features are. Every carrier has their own version of these plans, and some are renewing subscription plans, and some are one-time plans with a fixed period of 30 days or 90 days, and some include text, data, and voice, and some include only one or two of them. And some don't charge you at all for roaming, but you've got to be on their plan. So you have to do some homework. The other thing you can do is you can actually order SIM cards online for different countries, and some of them will work in the European Union, some just for certain countries. Depends on the carrier. You can wait for it to arrive, or you can wait until you get to the destination and then find a train station, tobacco shop, whatever, and buy a SIM card. Getting the little buggers out of there is not always easy. There are little tools with pin fingers. They say you can do it with a paper clip. I can't. But usually at some of these tobacco shops, they'll do it for you. So it's not a big obstacle, but it's just one more thing to have to deal with. And there's a third option, actually, and that is you can pick up a pay-as-you-go phone at your destination, and it works in that region. And there's pluses and minuses, which I'll get to, but if you're taking a lot of photos and things, then one question is, how do you get the photos over to either your phone or your file system? But if all you're going to do is text, then it doesn't matter. So, and then as you're going to the airport, make sure you're turning off data and voice roaming, and I'll show you in a little bit how that's done. Turn off background updates for apps and files. On my phone, I could probably plug it in to show you, but I probably have 20 to 25 different apps that can update in the background on my cell plan. And that's a lot of buttons to flick. And so you can't actually turn off all if your operating system allows that. But on a day-to-day basis, you may not realize how much activity is happening in the background on your phone. And then fully charge the device. This kind of is logical, but the other thing I recommend is there are these little power banks you can get, and some are 15, 20 bucks, and it's like an auxiliary battery you can plug your phone into and have it charged. So if you're on a long flight and you don't trust the USB plug-in in the seat in front of you, or there is none, or you're touring around and you're hiking and the phone is getting weak and you're trying to get your phone to show you on a compass where you should be going, it's also cheap insurance. The power supply. So you've got to charge your phone. The airport makes a lot of money because a lot of people just forget their power supplies. But the other thing is you need to make sure you have the actual power supply that is adaptable to the voltage in the place you're going to. So in the US, it's not an issue. But if you're going to Europe or Japan, it could be anywhere from 110 to 220 volts. And if your power supply for your phone, for example, only does 110 US only, and you plug it into 220, you're going to see the magic smoke come out, or worse. So if you do have a power supply that says in really small print that it has a range of like 100 volts to 220, great, but you still only have 2 prongs for North America. And there are things like this. This doesn't change the voltage. This only will change the plugs or the prongs. And if I do this right, for example, this is the European plug, and on the back side you can plug in your device for the American plug. I don't recommend doing hair dryers and heaters and anything that pull a lot of amps through these, but if all you have to do is change the plug, you can buy these from Amazon. They're fairly inexpensive. And this one has about 4 or 5 different flavors of plug adapters. However, if your device says it only does 110, on the right-hand side of this page, you see there's one example of many. This is about $37. It actually converts 220 volts down to 110. And so some camera chargers, for example, only do 110. So you can buy a device that actually changes the voltage for you. But of course, now you're dealing with actually, you're limited by the power this will handle. So again, no blow dryers and nothing that takes a lot of juice, but it will take care of charging cameras and tablets and cell phones and watches. And I failed to mention some watches actually also include cellular access. So same thing that I'm saying about the phones applies to the watches. A lot of times the watches will sync with your phone, so if you shut off roaming on the phone, it will also shut off on the watch, but you probably want to test that to be sure it actually works as advertised. This watch, by the way, it's a Apple Watch, but it's generation 1, so I'm 4 generations behind, so it doesn't do that, but the newer ones do. So this is probably the meat of the presentation, the SIM card option. And again, you can connect to Wi-Fi. You don't need a SIM card for Wi-Fi. There are some issues with Wi-Fi, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you can do a few things. You can just use your card as is with no roaming plan, and you will get billed accordingly. And it won't be pleasant. What I've been doing more recently is I use an existing SIM card with an international plan, and I will give you an example in a little bit. But in that case, you can set it up online at any time. You can keep your existing phone number, so if there's issues like at home, somebody can just call your regular number. It rings, on the 3rd floor of some villa in Florence. And then the calls back to the States are basically the same. And there's no need to remove the SIM card. If you've ever dropped one on the floor, you realize it can be pretty hard to pick up, and then you clean off the contacts, and so no mess there. Plans can be pricey. I've seen prices ranging anywhere from $20 to $70 for 30 days. You can get 90-day plans. You can get automatic renewing plans if you travel a lot, but that's not me. And then if you do get a plan, it's got a certain number of limits, and if you exceed the limits, they will happily charge you then an extra fee. So you have to be aware and check on a regular basis how much data you're using, and that comes inside of your settings on the phone. You can track that. The other way is you can get a local SIM card. That's probably the lowest cost option. And again, like tobacco shops, they have stamps, they have SIM cards, they've got just about everything that you would need as a traveler. You can often come into another tobacco shop and say, add some value to the SIM card, and that can be done. And the cons are it's a different phone number and country code that has to be dialed if somebody needs to reach you. And it's also, if you do it, it's kind of a pain to pop out one card and pop in the other unless you've done it a lot. If you're going to do so, I would get the people in the tobacco shop to just do it for you. They do it all the time. And then finally, a local pay-as-you-go cell phone. They're pre-configured for the destination network. It's no big deal if it's lost or stolen. And then again, you're carrying now multiple phones around. And what do you do about your photos and apps that you might end up taking with that phone? And so maybe you take photos with your regular phone and you communicate with this other phone. And so that's something that you'd have to figure out. Yes?
One more call for using the international plan, because I used that last year when we went to the United Kingdom.
Yep.
Unless you're different than me, there's going to be somebody you forget to tell you're going to be out of town, you got a different phone number if you're using SIM card or whatever. My financial advisor needed to get hold of me to make a decision about something. And luckily, I use the international plan, so I got the phone call came right through to me. No problem. I never thought to let him know that I was gone.
Sure.
So it's a nice advantage to have the international plan so that anybody needs to get hold of you in some kind of a emergency or semi-emergency. They'll do it and it's seamless and you don't have to worry about somebody you forgot to contact and let them know that you're going to be gone.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Anybody who needs to get hold of you and they don't know you're gone, they won't know you're gone unless you tell them. And this might be old news to a lot of you, but it's amazing how clear the voice communications is, even though you're, 2,000-3,000 miles apart. So there's a lot going on. Every voice call these days is actually digital, and so they can tweak and adjust and cancel echoes, and so the quality is really exceptional. We do find that 90% of the time we're texting back and forth and sometimes a few pictures. And we do some of the data network stuff. Mostly it's just download the email in the evening after a long day and some quick web things. But anytime you're doing video and all of that, that's another realm in terms of data usage. So we keep that to a minimum. And if you have a hotel that's got Wi-Fi, I think it's better than, let's say, a coffee shop, because at least with a hotel, you have to enter a password of some sort. And so a lot of the major file transfers are done over Wi-Fi, for us anyway. Okay, this is a bit hard to read, but if you start on the left two columns are for cellular settings, and this is an iPhone. Yours may be different, but what's useful, let's see, does this have a laser, Tom? Aha, a green laser. So up here you notice under the option of cellular data, it says roaming is off. Now, I keep talking about roaming, but you can be roaming with voice and you can be roaming with data. So both of them will cost you money. But the data roaming by default should be off on your phone. And then there are Wi-Fi calling options you can turn on and off. Some people like the Wi-Fi calling options, but they can be tricky to configure at times. At the bottom, you see the start of my list of apps. There's Facebook, there's a bunch of others, and that's turned on. But there are probably 20 additional apps below this that are at some point using cellular data. And so when you turn off data roaming, that means this will not be happening. I also get a measure of how much I'm using at the moment in terms of data and overall longer period. This, if I scroll down enough, it's sort of the bottom end of my apps that are tied to the cellular, but that's not why I'm doing it. There's something called Wi-Fi Assist in the Apple world, and anybody running Android can tell me if there's something similar. What this says is, if for some reason your Wi-Fi signal seems to be weak, we will just automatically switch over to the cellular network so you don't notice it. However, the cell network is going to cost you money. So I usually leave that turned off on the Apple device. And I don't know, Tom, if there's something similar on Android, but that's what it's about, and it's worth to keep that off when you're traveling. There's iCloud Drive. This is just another version of a cloud that sends data. One configuration with photos on the iPhone or the iPad is you can have it make a copy of each photo you take and upload it to the cloud. Not a good idea when you're traveling. And then reset statistics, but it does keep track of your usage, in this case call time. So I've been on this phone for 12 hours. Now this is since October, by the way, so like I say, 90% of our phone usage is texting. And then over here, this doesn't show any particular Wi-Fi network, but what is important to note is security by default is a WPA encryption. So anything that I connect to, I'm going to make sure that I have my network settings encrypted. And if the network itself says we don't bother with encryption, then you probably shouldn't bother with the network. Questions on that? Okay. So apps, there are a billion of them. And that can be very difficult, but at least this will give you a sampling of the kinds of apps that I find useful when I'm traveling. Maps or Google Maps. This is the Apple Maps or the Google equivalent. I have both. And it tells you where things are or are not. Sometimes it's better than the GPS units that you buy that are standalone because it's updated more often. Except when you're traveling, don't let it update. Skype can work if you want to do a video call over Wi-Fi. Make sure your security settings are correct, but Skype is a free download. I Translate Voice or Google Translate. These are actually very good. And I'm not sure if this will work, but maybe we'll do a live experiment here. Bear with me, Tom. No, I do not want to upgrade now, but thank you for asking. Good day, how are you? Okay, so that's me in Japanese. So it's really useful, especially going into shops. Google Translate also has the feature where if you take a picture of a plaque with text on it, it can translate that as well. I don't know how well it works, but in a museum, that's worth $1 million. And then, it works very well. Excellent. Yeah, and the amazing thing is the price is right. You know, excellent point. Buffet lines when you're visiting some place to know, is this chicken or is this something other than chicken? All right, and then I have to have a little news in the morning, but the more you sit there and watch all the videos and things in news, it chews up data. But once in a while, you have to have it. And the airline app that says your flight's been changed, your gate is different, the time is different, that's really worth a lot. And FlightAware is a tracker that I use for looking at flights. It actually shows you a map and shows you where the plane is and how much time is left and all of that. And then WeatherBug. There's many weather apps out there, but WeatherBug is one that I like to show me the weather in the places I'm going to, and short-term, long-term prognostications, and then some books. And then it's good to find apps that, quote, cache the information, meaning if you shut off the Wi-Fi or if you shut off the cellular, you still have the file on your phone or your device. And so ebooks, some of them do, some of them don't. And if they don't, just be sure that you realize you're downloading a file of a certain size. Jim?
Along those lines, then, Google Maps will let you get local maps. And we use that quite a bit. I only have my Wi-Fi data, but you can download the map for the area you're going to visit the next day. Turn off the cellular, well, I didn't even have cellular. Turn off the Wi-Fi though if you want, and it still works with GPS, so you can still do well, it'll still do the driving instructions within that map, and walking, it'll show you where it is, although Google Maps wouldn't calculate walking routes, but at least show you where you were on the map.
Sure. And just to repeat it, the comment from Jim Holman is that Google Maps lets you store multiple maps, and then even with your connectivity turned off, it will follow the GPS and get you around within the region of the maps that you've stored. I hope that's correct, Jim. Okay. So here's an example of a roaming plan, and this, every 6 months they seem to change these, but most recently there's a 30-day plan by AT&T. They have many others. This one worked best for us because, you know, a week away or 10 days away is typical vacation, I think. Voice, it's 35 cents a minute. In the past, it was $1 a minute, and if you didn't have the plan, it was $2 or more a minute. The texting, in their plan, it's unlimited to send, and then for receiving, it depends on what you have for your home plan. Our home plan happens to be unlimited, so it works either way. And even though it says text, I can send pictures of cats to Italy, and I can get pictures of food and a dish back from Italy, and so it works pretty well. And then the data, they moved it up from 1 gigs to 2 gigabyte, and so that's good. But in the process of moving up the total data allowed, they moved up the price a little bit too. So these things change, like I say, every 6 months. And to give you a rough feel, looking at my own usage, checking email is like a 5 to 10 megabyte hit each time. Facebook, YouTube, and Skype, it can be 10 to 100 times that. And then the translators and maps, it varies. It's not horrible, but I don't have a good figure for that. But those are things I would use the most that would require data. So I call this hacks and reminders, maybe sort of collecting little bits of wisdom that I've been given from other people and that I picked up. If everything fails and you're trying to make sure you're not roaming and you forget where everything is, just set your phone or your iPad to airplane mode. So that kills all of that in one fell swoop, and then you can go back and read and figure out what you do need to set so it's not causing you any problems. Free Wi-Fi is definitely the cheapest. Most modern hotels in, you name it, Iceland, Europe, Australia, whatever, offer free Wi-Fi. And assuming you do have to put in some form of password, the same one that everybody else in the hotel puts in, by the way, but it's better than nothing. It's the cheapest way to go. So you only need to use your cellular sparingly. And Wi-Fi, of course, has a range of about 200 feet. So if you're going hiking for the day, you'll get about a block from the hotel, and that's about all. Clear sandwich bags. So probably unexpected for this talk, but all of these little cables and adapters and things, they can go skittering to the back end of your backpack, and you won't find them when you need them. A Ziploc bag or two is what I use to keep them all together. Then at least I know where they are. And because it's clear, you can see the bugger even if it's hiding in the bottom. Back up your key documents. We talked about that. Flash drive, bring it with you, but don't keep it in the same place as your passport or your boarding passes or other things. And whatever you're doing, think about using passwords and encryption and non-public networks where possible for the Wi-Fi. The power banks, I'm a big fan of. By the way, you cannot and should not check those in your luggage, but they are allowed on a carry-on. And if you have a smart bag, I don't have a smart bag, but if you do, those smart bags have a lithium-ion battery in them. You've got to pop it out and carry it with you if you want to be able to keep your smart bag battery. But that gives people the ability to use their suitcase as another way to charge their phone. And then tablets with cellular capability, you pay more for it, but if you're using it especially for directions and maps, it's nice to have the bigger screen. And so if you're going to do a lot of driving, for example, whether it's in the US or not, it's probably something I would recommend. If that's not how you use it, then it's cheaper to go with standard Wi-Fi only tablet. Some phones have dual SIM slots, so you can keep your regular carrier, and then if you pick up a SIM on the road, you can just tell the phone, switch to this one, and then switch back when you're going to your home destination. I don't have a phone like that, but some people do. And you don't have to keep roaming on, even with the plan, the whole time. If you want to make sure that you're not using any data for background tasks, you can turn it on when you want to, shut it off, run around the town, and turn it back on when you want to. And then there are a number of apps that use data that people aren't aware of, but Maps is one of them. Translators, they talk to the cloud. iMessage is an Apple version of texting, but it actually is done over the data network. It's not done over the cellular network, but it'll cost you money because it's acting like data instead of acting like a text message. And then background updating, like we said. So you made it. You survived 2 weeks in Europe, taking barge trips down the rivers and everything else, and you're back home. What do? You turn off the roaming plan with your carrier, unless you've got a fixed duration plan that automatically shuts off. Check your carrier billing just to be sure. Don't wait till the bill comes. I just go online and make sure there's nothing surprising that popped up, because you can dispute a bill, but you've got a limited time to do so. I don't know what it is, but it takes you just a few minutes to go online and look at charges. And you can re-enable background downloads, cloud storage. Part of the problem is you may not remember what everything was that you disabled. However, you're now home, you've got time to work that out. And then those new photos and files that you took on your vacation, back those up so there's more than one copy sitting around. And so, how are we doing? Almost there. So as a wrap up, I think it's a real boon to have a mobile device with you when you travel and take advantage of it as long as you have a strategy. Don't let the roaming charges break your bank account. Password protect everything you're doing. So we talked about network protection, but if you drop your phone and it's lost, you don't want people with access to all of your contacts and things like that. So make sure your password is set. And public Wi-Fi, I do recommend you use that. Just use it carefully. And if there's no password at all, however rudimentary, I'd probably find a different place personally. Always encrypt your data, and don't do anything like banking over a public Wi-Fi site, even if you trust where it's located. Do that over the cellular or wait till you get home if you can. And then turn off apps and functions that update or back up in the background. Keep the high bandwidth activities to a minimum. And then these can be a personal assistant for you. It can make your travel easier. Years ago, we were in Rome, and it was my first time in Italy. My wife had been there a few times, and so we were in an apartment that was about a half a block from a gelato shop. And after eating dinner every night, we'd get gelato and take it to the room. And the last night we were there, we told the owner, arrivederci, we're going back to America, but he didn't quite understand it. And he said something to us in Italian, and I know enough Italian. I said, well, I don't know what this is. So he goes in the back, he gets out an iPhone and types into a translator, and it says, next year, question mark? So these things have become ubiquitous, and not just for us, but people all over the world. It's a pretty powerful tool. The photos have gotten better. I look forward to hearing what Jim has to say about taking photos with your phone next time. And then just keeping up on weather and news and music and web access. And then finally, just a small thing, but if you've got a tablet and a phone, you know that you can back up your phone photos to your tablet. So even when you're traveling, you can have a second set of data without going through any Wi-Fi or cellular network. You can just plug in through the USB if you've got things set up right. So that's about what I had. I'm glad you came. I've got a bunch of references for you. And Jim. I have not used it, but it's a good question. So I can't tell you how it works, but I do know those with the eSIM card do need at least one physical SIM card to tie into Verizon or AT&T or whatever. But some of those have a double-sided carrier, and it looks like you can put a second SIM card in those. So I don't have the answer for you because I haven't tried it, but I've seen what you're talking about. And Jim?
Well, the question is, maybe it's directed to Tom or someone else, but when you're traveling, would this be the time to have a VPN?
So the question is, does it make sense to use VPN when you're traveling? And the answer is sure. If you know how to set it up. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it gives you a level of protection there. On the downside, VPN does add more data, both the encryption and the decryption and the extra hops there and that. So it's one of those cases of, I think, like Mike was saying, be aware of what you're connecting to. And if you're connecting to the hotel Wi-Fi, again, be cautious with what you do. Now, would I have a problem backing up my photos? I use Google Photos, and I have the auto backup, and I have it turned on for only Wi-Fi. So, that I don't care. If somebody can see my picture or intercept that traffic, I don't care. Let them have at it. But it's worth backing up there and that and having it accessible. But if you have other critical data or connecting to sites, then you have to be more careful on some of the stuff. But VPN can cause you some problems. If you've never used VPN before, all of a sudden you may get locked out of some things because it can't trace back to where the originator is. If the originator is in the United States or if the originator is really over in Europe, And so an example would be like streaming services, or iTunes itself can have problems if you start using VPN and things like that. So there's some things in there.
Time with VPN was very useful to me. I spent a number of years in the Air Force Base in South Korea, and I wanted to get into, I don't remember if it was Social Security or Medicare, and that doesn't allow you to go in from overseas. I turned on my VPN, and I went right through as if I was in California or Minnesota or whatever. So it can be helpful for those websites that block overseas access.
No, good deal.
Yep. Other questions?
So
Patty?
you've mentioned storing your data on a flash drive. How do you guys use that? I mean, what is your thought that you would take that to a local shop and plug in your flash drive and recover your
Well,
documents?
one example would be you've lost your passport and you've got to go home. So you maybe go to a consulate or, you know, someplace or like a police station and say, how do I, how do I get home? How do I take this and use it to get some other credentials?
Yeah, no matter anywhere you go, they're going to have a PC or a Mac or something's going to be around, and you can plug in a USB and look at it or pull it up and use it. So that's the thought there is, as opposed to a different device that might have gotten stolen or lost or whatever, you'd have it available.
Just for the, if I can tell a story along those lines, we were just in Luxembourg, reclaiming citizenship. My niece forgot her FBI background check. It's a critical document. She needed it. She had a copy that she had backed up on her Google Drive. We went to Mr. Copy, and after some monkeying around with the fact that she had to do her verification and she didn't have cellular connection, anyway, she was able to get that PDF copy through her PC then onto a USB drive, then and connected, then go to Mr. Copy. It sounds like Mr. Coffee. They had a shop called Mr. Copy where she then could print out a copy that was acceptable for her applying for that Luxembourg citizenship. And that's also where those Google Maps came in handy. We had them there. We ended up walking around, finding Mr. Copy and everything. We had Google Maps downloaded onto my phone, and we knew where to go, and GPS helped us get there. So didn't even have to connect when we were doing that. GPS works fine, but we already had the copy of the maps downloaded.
Any other questions?
Okay, I'll give one additional comment. The apps, in addition to loading new apps, what I recommend and what I do myself is I delete a number of apps that I have on my phone and that I know I'm not going to use. An example would be like the Care 11 app. I don't need Care 11 when I'm overseas, and then I don't have to turn off an option where it's maybe updating or downloading data in the background there. But if you go through and delete a bunch of the stuff that you're not using, streaming services or things like that I know I'm not going to use, it's one less app on the phone. I don't have to worry about it consuming any data or doing anything. And when I get back, then I can just, it's easy enough to reload and reuse the apps there. So it's can make it a little bit easier there.
One last gadget to take along when you go. Bring along your cigarette lighter adapter for your USB. If you're driving around and you need power on your phone, that's a lifesaver. Because you're going to be able to plug that in just about any car in the world.
Yeah, the comment, I'll repeat it for the other, is bring along a cigarette adapter because those are kind of universal, and so if you do have a device, you can do it. Along those same lines of power, some people will bring the power converter, and what's handy is to have a 1 to 3 plug, so you can plug multiple chargers in there at the same time, because we all end up with multiple devices, and if you've got one converter and only one plug can be in there and you're trying to charge, 3 phones and
Camera.
2 tablets and a camera and stuff like that. Just something simple like that can make it easier that you don't have to keep unplugging and plugging other things in there.
Just one comment on your camera, make sure that it allows you to update the battery via USB or some other. There's a lot of nicer cameras that don't allow that. So you plug it in and it's waiting for you to transfer data, pictures to your laptop, but it won't let you charge the battery. So make sure that's capability in the camera.
Yeah, a number of the cords and things like that will have the problems. And if you do have a separate camera, what's handy too is additional batteries, because people don't think about it. You typically don't take that many pictures or video or that, but then when you're on vacation, you maybe double or triple or quadruple that, and having an extra battery is important there and can save you the headache of missing out there.
Yeah, and sometimes if the airlines want to be finicky, they can about saying you can only have one extra battery that's not attached to something. So, you know, some of that is just experience, but at least you don't check them. You know, that's known. Well, listen, I appreciate it. We'll be tearing down here, but if you have any last questions, just feel free to come up. And thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Now, if I get this back, that'll be good.
Hopefully
It'll be there.
maybe
We're
it's
fine.
in the back table.
Maybe need both you guys